To the left is Henry Judd Gray. To the right is Ruth Snyder, formerly known as Ruth Brown. And this is Albert Snyder. Three names that were very popular. Their story is attributed to tabloids, really just the existence of tabloids first coming out. The story was sensationalized. It was the talk of the town. Everyone was following the story. So much so that an execution at the electric chair was photographed. The first time ever a death at the electric chair was photographed. And this is the home where Ruth Snyder and Albert Snyder lived. The home is in Queens Village. How it looks modern day. Their story, before we go any deeper, was the genesis for Guns N' Roses album feature with the Daily News headline photograph showing the execution. Use Your Illusion was the name of the album. Also, it was referenced in many movies, inspiration for many movies. In particular, Double Indemnity, 1944. So the story, as we're driving around what is the modern day neighborhood now of Queens Village. When she met Albert Snyder in 1915, Ruth Brown, life of the party, vivacious, 20-year-old with a blonde bob, and Albert, a quiet 33-year-old artist. Very little in common. But they soon married, and people assumed that they were happy. Albert did find work at a magazine, and their only child, Lorraine, was born in 1918. But in reality, even though you're married, you have a child, they were not happy, and they never had been. I don't know what possessed me to marry him, Ruth said later. His interests were not mine. One interest Ruth definitely did not share was with Albert's preoccupation with his former fiancée, Jessie. Not long before she and Albert were to be married, Jessie became sick and she died. Albert was brokenhearted and never got over her. He married Ruth years later. And apparently, though, his new wife would understand that, he still loved Jessie. He hung her picture on the wall of their home and even named his boat Jessie. Your destination is on the right. And really attempting to explain this to his wife, he wisely told her that Jessie was the finest woman he ever met. Ruth, outraged, and the picture disappeared from that wall. Here we are again in front of the home. Soon afterwards, Albert's boat was renamed Ruth. By the time they had been married 10 years, the relationship between Ruth and Albert had noticeably decayed. She still loved to go to parties and have flirtations, though. Oh, yes, she did. She was dissatisfied with Albert Snyder. She didn't appreciate his artistic ability or his quiet wit. He seemed elderly, she said. Elderly. He was deaf in one ear and preferred wearing old clothes and tinkering with his car or boat. He was acting like an old man, she thought. In 1925, Ruth met Henry Judd Gray. Judd was a traveling corset salesman, meaning he sells women's undergarments, underwear. And he had a wife and he had a daughter who was the same age as Lorraine. It was not her first affair, nor was it his. And on the surface, there seemed to be little to attract them to each other. But she got control over me, Judd said. Judd's job made it easy for him to sneak around. Really, Ruth had no reason to be away at night, but she often managed to do so. Soon after they began their affair, Ruth confided in Judd that she tried to kill her husband a few times, but he was surprisingly hardy. Once, she said that she slipped some rat poison in his food, which gave him what she called what he thought was indigestion. Why would she do anything to harm him, he thought. Outwardly, the Snyders appeared to be doing well in 1927. They owned a nice home in Queens, and Albert was the art director for Motor Boating magazine. He gave his wife $85 of the $115 he earned each week to pay the family's expense and to save. $85 in 1927 is roughly equivalent to about $12.25 in 2019. But 32-year-old Ruth, well, she saved little. She had a thing for fur coats, amongst other things, and that is the picture of the execution. We'll get to that later. She was insistent that Albert needed to buy life insurance, and a lot of life insurance. Albert thought it was a waste, but in response to his wife's repeated demands, he purchases a small policy for $1,000. Now, it was not enough for Ruth. Oh, no. Without Albert's knowledge, she took out a $48,000 policy on his life with a double indemnity clause. That meant if Albert happened to be violently murdered, that amount would be doubled. $96,000 is worth about $1.4 million today. When the premium came due, she was forced to tell Albert what she had done, and he paid the premium. Apart from paying the premium, it's really unclear how else Albert reacted. Maybe he threatened to let the policy lapse. That would be one explanation for why Ruth informed Judd that the time had come to murder Albert. Now, Ruth told Gray she would go out with Albert and their daughter Lorraine Saturday night to a card party at the home of some friends. And she would see that Albert would drink a lot. And Judd was to come into the house while they were out and lie in wait. When they came home, Albert would fall asleep quickly. Then Judd would strike and kill him, Ruth announced. He would then tie her up and then go through the house, ransacking it to make it look like a burglary. Judd, well, he didn't want to do that. But the insurance money was persuasive, and Ruth was insistent, and even threatened to expose his cheating to his wife. Accordingly, the Snyders went out for an evening on Saturday, March 19th, 1927, and they returned home late. As Ruth predicted, Albert went into their bedroom and immediately went to sleep. Ruth put Lorraine to bed, and then she went to the guest room, where Judd was waiting. Albert, fairly drunk, she told him. She'd also managed to sneak some kind of anesthesiac into his drink. The Bridgeport telegram later revealed it was going to be easy. Ruth, she definitely assured him. Led on by Miss Snyder, Judd Gray entered the bedroom and looked at Albert Snyder, who was fast asleep. Ruth handed Judd a heavy iron shaft weight and told him to strike. Thanks to the drinking and his partial deafness, these slight noises did not awake Albert. Instead, he awoke and grabbed Judd by the tie, fighting him. Now, 45, Albert was 11 years older than his assailant, who also had the advantage of taking him by surprise while he was sleeping. And yet, Judge sensed that Albert was about to beat him. He cried out, and Ruth grabbed the sash weight and struck her husband. So she had killed him. She killed him. Now Judd, he felt numb, and Ruth commanded him to change into one of Albert's shirts, pointing out that his own shirt was bloody. She said she would burn Judd's shirt. According to plan, they tied up Snyder, and then Judd tied up Ruth and went through the house. He smashed some glasses, pulled out drawers, making it look as if, though, the house had been ransacked. He finished his work, and before the sun came up, he crept away. Now, the story gets only more, like it's out of a novel, right? So now, you ask yourself, what about little Lorraine? The next morning, Ruth managed to awaken her daughter, who had slept through everything, and told her to go next door for help. Now, when the police arrived, they quickly realized that, the scene was staged. First, they found some of Ruth's stolen jewelry hidden under a mattress. Amateur. Then, they interviewed little Lorraine, who told them Mama and Papa quarreled lots. When they pressed her, she told them that her mother frequently stayed away all night. The police were very suspicious, and one of them managed to find Ruth's diary, where she wrote openly about her affair with Judd Gray and her contempt for Albert, who had never gotten over his dead fiancé. Another officer found a small pin with the initials JG inscribed on it. This tiny article sealed it. The detectives' opinion. They said nothing right away, but easily tracked down Judd Gray and brought him in for questioning. Now Judd, he folded immediately under pressure, told the police that Ruth had gotten him to help her murder her husband. The light blue shirt in his hotel room was identified as one belonging to Albert Snyder. Now Ruth was arrested and shown the diary and the pen and told of Judd's confession. Upon hearing that Gray had confessed, Ruth turned on him. They would be tried together for the murder of Albert Snyder. In an ironic twist, the pin with the JG initials was later found to belong not to Mrs. Snyder's lover, but to Mr. Snyder's former fiancée, Jessie Gooshard. The trial began, April 11th, and lasted 3 weeks. Ruth Snyder said that Gray instigated and carried out the murder over her protests. Of course, she didn't want this done. Gray's attorney said that his client tracked back out at the last moment. But of course, Miss Snyder pulled him into the bedroom and commanded that, well, he continued to strike. When Judd was about to be overpowered, she finished the job herself. Now the jury, they didn't believe either of the defendants. They deliberated for 71 minutes and returned with a guilty verdict for first-degree murder against Gray and Snyder. They would be sentenced later. They would be sentenced later in the week. Now, throughout the trial, Miss Snyder was described as being steely and cold, but the morning after the guilty verdict, Ruth had the first of many of what newspapers called collapses. The doctors called it hysterical epilepsy and noted that, if repeated often, would no doubt result in insanity. In his cell, Judd, Gary, breakfast calmly. The two were sentenced on Friday, May 13th, 1927. Throughout, though the justice, the judge, he was outspoken against capital punishment. The law was the law. He told Ruth and Judd they would die in the electric chair in Sing Sing. Neither defendant displayed any emotion. They would be transferred to the prison that Monday. Now, Washington, D.C.'s Evening Star described the famous couple in their retrospective selves that night. All right, so Gray was described as being is on the right. Resigned to his own doom. Now, Miss Snyder, the Queens Village housewife, sees herself as a victim of injustice and is prepared to fight against the death sentence. At Sing Sing, which was the prison that they were in, Judd's intake papers noted that he had a wife, Isabel, and a child. He was a high school graduate and Episcopalian who regularly attended church. No criminal record. He smoked and drank, but did not use drugs. His criminal acts, they wrote, were attributed to intemperance and women. Judd had $8.50 in his pocket, which was confiscated. He signed a form in his handwriting, H. Judd Gray. Ruth was a Catholic housewife who occasionally attended Mass. She had an 8th grade education and described herself as a moderate drinker. She did not use tobacco or drugs. She had no criminal record. Her purse contained $15.24, and that was confiscated as well. She added her large, airy signature to the wrong field there on the record. Due to appeals, Ruth and Judd were inmates at Sing Sing for 8 months. November 25th, Ruth Snyder sent her mother and daughter a telegram. Feeling fine, she wrote, have nothing to worry about. Perhaps, she thought, the governor would stay her execution. But on the 12th of January, 1928, Miss Snyder was half led, half pulled into the death chamber. There was a gasp from the reporters. The cold, a woman that they had remembered from the trial was nowhere to be seen. In her place was a haggard, frightened woman who had aged 25 years in a matter of months. The prisoner was marched to the electric chair. And then strapped in. Just before the mask was placed over her face, Ruth, Snyder cried out, apparently, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." The case and trial were sensational, and the room was crowded with reporters who were there to witness the execution. Photographs were strictly forbidden, but the photographer, Tom Howard, managed to sneak in a customized camera by strapping it to his ankle. So at the moment that the electric current began, Tom snapped his picture. The next morning, the blurry photo appeared on the front page of the New York Daily News. Tabloids were born. So there is a horror, right, about the photograph that Tom Howard took. It's the only photograph ever taken of an electric chair execution. Edison videographed the persecution of a Mr. Leon, last name starts with a C, we won't mention it, President McKinney's assassin, but it lacks the nightmarish quality of his, inequality of the photo. Ruth was pronounced dead at 11:09 a.m. and her body was removed. Now, seconds later, Judd was brought in. He had a janitor walk away from the ceiling, and he noted to everyone, and everyone noted that he seemed calm. And he is pronounced at 11:15 a.m. It fell to the record keeper at Sing Sing to take the last official action of the case. He pulled the files for Snyder and Gray and wrote,